Welcome back to From the Shed, and with myself, T.Dot. As always, thank you very much for joining me. Now, before we get into the content, please go and subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Now, we've got a massive game coming up. Yes, we did beat Leeds 1-0. No, there was not a video for it, but we did beat them 1-0 the weekend in the Premier League. It was a good performance from the players. There's still a lot of things that are wrong with the team. Substitutions didn't make sense on Saturday, but we won 3 points, 1-0. Can't complain. But moving over to tomorrow game tomorrow night's game, massive game against Dortmund, a 1-0 deficit to turn around. It does mean that we have to score 2 goals without any reply from Dortmund. It's a massive ask from a team that doesn't necessarily score a lot of goals at the moment, and we're looking to the likes of Wesley Fofana or other players in the team to get us our goals. This is a big game, not just for Graham Potter, but for Chelsea and the season over as a whole. I think if we can turn that deficit around at Stamford Bridge tomorrow, then obviously it gives us something to fight for, the last 8 of the Champions League, and then it's anyone's to win. But I do think this, even with the 2 injuries that we'll talk about for Dortmund but in a minute, but in terms of us, we just, I mean, I was surprised how well we played against Leeds, like I said, in some way, in some spells, but there's still a lot that is wrong with this team. Dortmund will be a totally different team. A totally different performance is needed against Dortmund than it was against Leeds. So it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to try and predict. But just thinking about the lineups, I mean, obviously Graham Potter's just had his press conference now. He's just said that this is a game that's too early for N'Golo Kante, so not to expect him into the team tomorrow. Christian Pulisic is in the team. He's been involved in a lot of the promo for the match as well, so I'd expect him to maybe start ahead of maybe Mudryk on that left side. But also as well, Reece James, who missed out against Leeds at the weekend with a tight hamstring. Graham Potter's confirmed, and obviously if you go on our social accounts, you'll see that Reece James was part of the training, the team that was training this morning ahead of the game. And so he looks like he could be in contention. And for me personally, this is a game that Graham Potter can't not play Reece James. If he's fit enough to be on the bench, Reece James should be starting the game. He's someone that we need down that right side. And if you think back to the first leg as well, you know, a lot of that play from Dortmund was not only down the middle, but they exploited both flanks, both left and right side of our team. So I think Reece James has to be in that team tomorrow. He has to be the one that can try and at least get the ball forward a bit more. Personally, for me, if I was Graham Potter, I'd go with a back 3 with the 2 wing backs. I'd still play Ben Chilwell, Reece James as my wing backs. I'd have obviously Trevor Chalobah, who I think is. It's harsh on Trevor Chalobah, who hasn't really featured because of Badiashile coming into the team. Wesley Fofana returning from injury. You know, obviously Thiago Silva's out now, so he's probably going to get a bit more game time. But I would give Trevor Chalobah a start tomorrow night alongside Koulibaly and Wesley Fofana. Obviously Badiashile isn't in the Champions League squad, so we won't be seeing him tomorrow night. But those would be my 3 centre-backs, with Ben Chilwell as a left wing-back, Reece James right wing-back. Now, one of the key things in the first leg was Emre Can and Ozcan getting a lot of space in that midfield. Jude Bellingham as well. All 3 of them were just bossing and demanding that midfield. And one of the things that I wanted to see from Graham Potter in that game was that adaptation, changing the game, changing it when we went 1-0 down and we didn't change anything. We just allowed, like for like subs to come on. We didn't change anything in midfield. And I think if we go for 3 at the back, the 2 wing backs, I think if we do go a goal down, Graham Potter has to change something. He has to change something tactically to cope with Dortmund, because in the midfield in the first leg, it was so easy for them to walk that ball through our midfield. And, tomorrow night, I'm expecting to see Mateo Kovacic and Enzo Fernandez in that midfield, the 2 of them together. If it's a game too early for N'Golo Kante, then understandable, but I do think we need someone like Kovacic in that midfield alongside Enzo Fernandez. For me personally, would be the 2 in midfield, and then going forward, I think you'd have to potentially put Raheem Sterling on the right hand side. I'd probably go with Kai Havertz, João Felix as my striker, and then maybe Christian Pulisic on the left of that as well. It might be a game that's, again, too early for Christian Pulisic, so maybe he starts on the bench. Maybe you put Kai Havertz down the middle and João Felix on the left. But again, João Felix is a player that's only on our books for 6 months. He's only here for a short period of time unless we extend that loan deal or we make it a permanent move. So I think he's always going to be starting the games for us, regardless of what competition it is. He's going to be the one that's involved in a lot of the games. And Graham Potter just was asked a question about who takes penalties for Chelsea, and apparently designated penalty taker is now Kai Havertz. So you probably see Kai Havertz start ahead of any of the other. I think Fofana is David Datro Fofana is one of the other players that might feature, but I would say Kai Havertz down the middle, maybe João Felix on the left with Raheem Sterling on the right, or vice versa. You put João Felix on the right and Raheem Sterling on the left. But it's a massive game. This is a game that could potentially ultimately decide how our season's going to pan out, whether we're just fighting for, bragging rights in the league in terms of trying to either get Europa League or get Europa League Conference, or do we finish mid-table, or do we go on and try and win the Champions League? So there's a lot for us to at stake tomorrow night. Me personally, I've already said I've wrote this season off, and if we do go out the Champions League, it's not all doom and gloom, because I think it still gives Graham Potter the opportunity to work with this squad, understand his best 11, start working and planning for next season. Because even if we do go on and we go on to lose the game tomorrow, there's still a lot of football to play in this season. There's still a lot for us to try and fight for. There's still a lot of points up for grabs as well. And I think that Graham Potter has to start using this squad now, thinking about pre-season, thinking about what he needs in the summer for additional transfers, who needs to leave the club. All these things need to be... These are questions that, as a manager, Graham Potter should be asking himself, do I need to get rid of certain players? Are certain players good enough to be in the team? Are certain players not gelling as they should be? Are they being played in the right positions? There's so many questions. So I think for me, if we do go out the Champions League tomorrow, there's still a lot at stake for not just Graham Potter in terms of his job, but in terms of us as a team, us as a squad going forward. There's so many players in certain positions that's overloaded. You're looking at those midfield options in terms of Mason Mount and João Felix, Christian Pulisic, Hakim Ziyech, Mudryk, Madueke. There's so many players that you could play in those positions, and not all of them are going to be here next summer. We know that. There's a lot of talk around Mason Mount at the moment, but I just think this is still a critical, pivotal part of the season for Graham Potter, for Chelsea as a whole. Dortmund will want this game. Let's be honest. Dortmund, they've got two. I think Adeyemi and their goalkeeper is out tomorrow as well. Kobel is out, I think, as well tomorrow. So there's two big absentees for Dortmund, but it doesn't mean anything because, you look at their team, they still have, Sebastian Heller played really well for them. Marco Reus can come into that team. Brandt on the other side as well. Marius Wolf had a brilliant game at right back, if you remember, in that first leg for them as well. So they've got a good team. Let's not beat around the bush, and they're playing really well. They turned around a defeat and they ended up winning the game at the weekend in the Bundesliga as well. They fought through that and got a result. And they are a really difficult team to play against, regardless of Stamford Bridge or not. They're a difficult team to play against. They love playing out from the back. They love controlling possession of the football. They love using those wide spaces and the wide players, and also exploiting the midfield and definitely trying to command the ball, dominate possession in that midfield. So I'm expecting a lot from Dortmund going forward, even with Sebastian Heller, leading the line for them. I think they'll cause us problems. I really do. I think they'll cause us a lot of problems. And that's potentially why I would go with a back three. That gives you a bit more sustainability, a bit more comfort for those centre-backs to try and, cover each other's areas. And I think if you've got Reece James, you've got Ben Chilwell trying to get forward, at least you've got cover sitting behind you. And again, someone like N'Golo Kante would come in and usually do a good job of doing that. But without him in the team, you do need a bit more... you need a bit more of that comfort at the back, that you're willing to be able to go forward with the ball, knowing that you've got the cover behind you. And I think if the three centre backs in Chalobah, Koulibaly, Wesley Fofana would do that. This is another game where I don't want to see any players injured. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about Reece James, but if we pick up another big injury, Thiago Silva's out now for a couple of weeks. I would say at least for the next 3 to 4 weeks he's going to be out. We can't really afford to miss any other big key players, and I think if we pick up any more injuries, as I said already on many occasions, I wrote this season off anyway, but if we do end up losing another, big key player, and Enzo Fernandez, for instance, it's that part of the season now where, like I said, we have to just start planning for the next season and write this season off. And if we do lose tomorrow, if it does go to penalties, which I'm sure is a massive option, and as Graham Potter said in the press conference, the players have been working on penalties. Kai Havertz being a designated penalty taker does fill me with a bit of worry, but it's one of those things. If we get to that point where it's got to be penalties, then I'm sure, you look at some of those players that might take them, Reece James, Raheem Sterling might have to take one. You look at maybe Enzo Fernandez might have to take one as well. Obviously now Kai Havertz, you're sort of struggling for other options. I mean, we had Jorginho, that was one of our key ones. Mason Mount's taken a few but not been very successful. Reece James has taken a few and been successful. So I think that would be, that's my worry. I mean, ideally we want to try and win this game at least 2-1 and then have, go into the last state with an aggregate win of 2-1. But if that doesn't happen and we end up in penalties, it's difficult to see who's going to take the penalties for us. So, yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm going to go for a 2-0 Chelsea win. I think we do have enough in the tank to make sure that we can stop Dortmund from scoring, but also score 2 goals as well. Ideally, no penalties. I think if we go to penalties, then it's curtains for us. I don't think we've got the players that are comfortable, confident enough to take penalties on a big stage like the Champions League at the moment. So 2-0 Chelsea on the night, 2-1 on aggregate. We go through to the last state. Anything can happen after that. So that's going to be my prediction. Let me know what you think in the comments as well. Let me know what you think about the result tomorrow or the performance that you're hoping to see tomorrow. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. This has been T.Dot. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.